If you think your product only has local users and does not need localization, you're wrong. Because there's no such thing as a local user anymore. And the fact that we still design products as if there is breaking products in ways that teams usually don't even realize, but are paying for. And we really need to talk about this. What do we even mean by local user or localization? Single language, single currency, shared cultural assumptions. But that model is old. The internet used to be a lot more geographically anchored. And it isn't anymore. Even users who are geographically local are contextually global. We have multilingual family households. We have immigrants and expats. We have remote workers. People make international payments. We have teams that are cross-border. We use VPNs and travel. So your local user might live in New York, speak Spanish, buy gifts in euros, and work for a Berlin startup. That's no longer an edge case. But the majority of software nowadays makes assumptions as if your geography is your locale, as if your expectation is that wherever you're physically in is what you expect to get from your app. If I'm located in a country in Europe, clearly what I want to see is all of my search results in the language of that country. But do I? So what does it mean in practical terms? Well, you need to start thinking about your users in localization terms, even if your app is not internationalized. This can come in kind of weird ways. Things that sometimes we don't even expect, even if we know about them. What format does your app use to display dates? Are you clear about it? And can you let your users choose what makes sense to them? Same goes to time, 24 hours versus 12 hours. If it is not something that's too expensive for you to implement in your app, why wouldn't you? Temperature goes the same way. There are certain people who, even though they live in countries that use Fahrenheit, did not get used to it. Like me. I expect to read my temperatures in Celsius because that's what I remember and that's what I grew up on. Apps that give me temperatures in Fahrenheit are just not helpful. I need to constantly go and translate it. So why wouldn't you just display that conversion for me if you can, even if the app is not meant to be worldwide, it's just meant to be in one locale where Fahrenheit is the expectation. Input validation is another pitfall that's really easy to fall into. Consider validating name inputs. Don't neglect non-Western names and supporting those in your system. Certain names use diacritics. Those may take more physical space, like more bytes or more UTF-16 entities, than ASCII English-based names. Which means that if you are limiting your name input to a certain character count, people might have trouble putting their names in. There are also names that are longer than expected or shorter than expected. Some people don't have a last name at all. And some people have last names that might need a little bit more of a careful handling. Nancy Null, or Brian Undefinedson. It might not actually mean that your application is international, but it might mean that you may lose local people that just can't work with your software. These are problems that you are going to encounter even if your app is not international, even if your app is only serving people who live in a specific locale, because people aren't their locale, and with today's travel and remote work, they might live in a place that is not their comfortable culture context. So this is not just a programming question, this is a systems question. In physics, if you model something ignoring friction, your predictions fail. In software, if you model something ignoring variance, your product fails. So localization is system design for human variability. And of course, you always need to count for trade-offs. How much would it take for you to add these things to your software, and are they worth it? But the problem is that usually we're thinking about those as edge cases, dismissing them entirely, not even trying. What I'm saying is, you need to make those choices consciously. If you chose not to support certain aspects of international existence because they're too expensive to implement, that is fair enough, but make that choice consciously and be aware of your trade-offs. Don't just dismiss those as internationalization you can kind of tack on later. Don't underestimate how disruptive it might be for your users. So there is no such thing as a local user. There are only users with layered contexts. if we keep pretending that's not true, we keep finding those problems later when it's a little late to fix them, and now it will be expensive to fix them. So the ideal would be consider those issues ahead of time when you're building your system, when you're thinking about the architecture, when you're considering who your target audience actually is. And remember, even if your app is not yet international, your users most likely already are. So if this conversation interests you, please feel free to join me. I plan to continue talking about this and try to return the human-centered element into software development. And I'd love to hear from you. What are the occasions where you encountered a lack of localization that impacted you in some software? How would you like software to treat you when you're traveling or working remotely? Did you encounter some app that implemented some really awesome localization feature that made it so that you stick around with it? So join me in the comments and in this conversation, and I'll see you in the next video.